On this week's episode of the RAG podcast, I was joined by Barnaby Parker. Barnaby is the founder of Venquis, the ex-founder of Hydrogen Group, or Project Partners, which was originally Project Partners and merged with Pro and became Hydrogen Group and floated it in 2006. And now the founder of his third recruitment-based business called Collaborate Search, which is a curated network for freelance headhunters. Barnaby was actually my boss. So Barnaby was the guy who hired me in 2012 from being a pretty rookie recruiter in Australia, brought me into the UK market and brought me up and taught me a hell of a lot up until 2017. So for me, this was a really personal conversation. It was a really nice conversation, actually, to hear Barnaby talk about things from a side I never knew and I never saw as an employee. But I can say firsthand about how incredible he is as a guy and how inspirational he was to work for. He's been through all sorts. He's a super interesting guy. He's had art dealer businesses. He's had property portfolios. He's had 3 recruitment companies, and he's now on a big journey to grow something on a global scale. So there's bags and bags of learnings in this one. He's super honest. He's not the most detail orientated, so it's quite a high level conversation. But for anyone who wants to really learn from someone who's been through anything you can think of in recruitment, then this is one for you. So for the final time in 2019, without further ado, Barnaby Parker, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thank you, Sean Anderson.
It's great to have you in.
It's lovely to be here.
It's great. You brought me a present as well.
Well, everyone needs a cactus in their office, don't they?
He brought me a Christmas present.
I was assuming you weren't too prickly, so you needed something that was.
No, definitely. Let me have a little look at this. It's a very dry plant, Barnaby. It looks, I suppose, what a cactus is supposed to be.
Well, do you like the flower?
Yeah, maybe. I think I'm more of a flowery type. Well, look, great to have you, mate. Thanks for making the effort. You are the last official podcast of 2019.
So we should wish everyone happy Christmas.
We should wish everyone happy Christmas. How are you feeling about being the last of the year?
I am delighted.
Yeah, you stepped in as well. Someone, you were supposed to be 2020, and someone's pulled out. So thanks for taking the time.
Don't say that, Sean.
What?
So I'm the replacement.
You know you were. That's how it came about. So let's not pretend. But no, you're an amazing replacement. But Barnaby, I've given you an intro, but I can never give you your story justice. So can you just give the listeners a brief overview of who you are and what you're up to right now?
Okay. Well, I'm Barnaby.
Yeah.
It's quite a long story. So I'm getting long in the tooth, Sean.
But right now, you've got a new business, Collaborate.
So 9 years ago, set up Venquis.
Yeah.
I'm now the chairman of Venquis, and I've recently set up a business called Collaborate Search, which is creating a platform for freelance headhunters.
Yeah. So you're onto your third business, your third major organization in the recruitment space.
Yeah, I'm onto my third recruitment business.
Wow.
There's been a few others that you probably haven't heard of along the way.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get onto that.
Well, we don't need to.
Okay. We'll keep them quiet. Well, look, obviously, I know you, Barnaby. I've worked for you before, and there's some stories I know, but there's quite a lot I don't know. One thing I want to find out and want to tell the listeners about is how you got into recruitment, because I think you got quite an interesting story around how you originally got into it. And when was it? When did you originally get into recruitment?
So it was 1998.
Yeah.
I was reasonably fresh out of university, broke, although not broke in the context of graduates nowadays, but broke. Yeah. And my bank manager used to be on the phone to me every week. He was a chap called Chris Ingle.
Right.
He used to ring me up and he'd go, Barnaby, when are you going to pay off this overdraft? And it was like a £3,000 overdraft, and I didn't have a clue how I was going to pay it off. But I knew that I needed to earn some money, and I thought the place to earn money was the city. So I drew up a list of all the people all the heads of equity sales, bond sales, etc., in the investment banks, and I sent them a CV, and then I rang them up and I talked to my way in for interview. And I did get offered a job, but the company that offered me a job got taken over by Citigroup about a week later, so my job offer evaporated.
Right.
In the meantime, I met an old friend from university. So I used to run the ski club at Manchester University.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was a bit of a piss up, to be honest. But this guy said, look, you need a job. I'm in recruitment. Why don't you have a go? And I've got to be honest, I didn't want to be in recruitment. I had friends that done it. Felt like a cop-out. But I desperately needed a job. And so I went into recruitment. And from day one, I loved it.
And what were you recruiting?
So I was recruiting IT contractors into investment banks. Right. And investment managers.
And was the business that you work for the same place your friend worked, or did you? Then,
yeah. So So it was called Computer Team Group.
Right.
It got bought by Hayes. So the reason I set up Project Partners was because that desperate need for money meant that I was the guy in the room that simply had the phone. My ear hurt at the end of the day. All I did was call.
Yeah, I can imagine
I had
that.
endless call lists. I'd be in first thing, and I probably didn't make many friends because all I was doing was selling. But it meant that sales director gave me their BMW for within the first year, and I was winning top salesperson, top team leader, all that kind of stuff. And then the company was bought, and it was bought by Hayes, which at the time was not the brand it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3 of us there. We didn't want to work for Hayes, so we lifted ourselves out. In fact, we lifted the business that I'd been doing, respected the non-compete clauses, and set up Project Partners.
Wow. So how many years had you been in recruitment at that point?
Just under 2.
Fucking. So you've done well, but that's a short period of time to go and set something up.
Yeah, it was.
And you're on your own, were you, or did you have a partner?
No, so I had 2 partners, and I was really the contract guy, and my partner, so there was Tim, who certainly had more experience of running a recruitment business, but we were pretty green.
Yeah, what were you, like 23, 24 or something?
I was 26.
Okay. Still young.
Still young. It's a tough. The thing is, the lesson I learned then, or I didn't learn it then. I probably, looking back, have learned it. Is that I was a pretty seriously good recruiter.
Yeah.
Probably through hard work rather than anything else. But things went well for me. But I wasn't all the administrative bits and bobs. IT wasn't anything like it is now. But I just didn't have the first clue as to how it worked. So setting up my own recruitment business on my own would have been a slog. I'd have sold my way, but God only knows what sort of carnage there would have been around. So now I'm in a different spot 20 years on, but at the time there was, I needed people around me.
So the 2 of the guys were more admin and back office focused.
Yeah, well, Tim had been running an office,
right?
So he knew what to do.
Yeah.
I was the sales guy. Dan was my counterpart.
Great. And around 2000 then? 2001?
Yeah, that was 2000.
And what was it really like when you first started, day one? What was that? Can you remember?
Well, I reckon you'll know what it's like.
I mean, when you started in the year 2000, can you paint a picture?
What was recruitment like?
No, just your business. You and 2 guys in a room in 2000. Paint a picture for the listeners. What was that like?
Well, it was proper front room stuff. None of us had any money. Mm-hmm. We winged it. I remember sitting on a PC designing a logo, which 6 months later the logo was a couple of peas leaning on each other because, of course, Project Partners. Yeah. A couple of months later, it looked terrible. Yeah. And we were in a front room that had no windows, designed, literally selling our way out of this front room.
Wow.
And I remember I had a holiday in Cuba, a week's holiday in Cuba. And I was managing the interview process of a candidate that I'd kind of winged into a client, how it is. Yeah. And sat in this, just random hotel in the middle of this place, Varadero in Cuba, which I don't know if you've ever been to, but 20 years ago it was pretty rough. The phone barely worked, trying to persuade Merrill Lynch that they should be taking this person. They didn't. But and then it was just, you're in a room, there were 3 of us there, a bit of a chat about shareholdings, a bit of a chat about how we're going to fund it. And then, for all the best of plans, I placed someone within about 2 weeks. The client paid within about 3 weeks, and from there on we never looked back.
So that was 2000.
That was 2000.
From my memory, it was around 2010 when you exited, wasn't it? Was it 10 years later?
No, we floated it in 2010.
Right.
Sorry, 2006. And then I left 2007.
2007, right? Okay. So yeah, my memory's not very good. So in 6 years, you went from 0 to floating a business.
Yep.
How did that trajectory go over the years? Without going into too much detail, because I want to talk a bit more about Venquis than Project Partners. But what was the growth like? What did you go through over those first few years?
It was just a diagonal trajectory upwards.
Wow.
We smashed it, but it was. 2000 was the whole vision of the business and the focus was around business technology, and it was at a time when you had IT staff and you had people doing business, but you didn't have the two of them perhaps connected. So there were a lot of business analysts, project managers, etc., that we were placing. And we were winning, biggest client, ironically, was the one that I was dealing with in Cuba, Merrill Lynch Investment Managers. They became a huge client, and they were putting in new trading systems, compliance, etc. And it was a bit of right place, right time.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
It was, we can talk about the vision, the purpose, all the rest of it, but the reality was I was working really hard. I was out on the ground. I was known for one thing, which was basically business technologists within
the
financial
name was
services.
Clever, though, Project Partner. I mean, it says it all, doesn't it?
I didn't come up with that.
No, well, it worked. I'm sure it helped along the
did.
way. And did you have many competitors in that space at the time that were doing exactly that?
No, that's the other bizarre thing. Looking back, you think how many companies there are now.
Yeah.
At the time, there was Aston Carter was a massive competitor, and there are a couple of others whose names McGregor Boyle still around. They were great competitors, but there weren't it wasn't setting up a business. Now there's a blueprint that a lot of recruitment business, a lot of people follow.
Yeah. And
there's a lot of support around. Back in those days, it probably wasn't. Perhaps it wasn't as complicated, but there was no manual as to how to do it.
Did you grow a huge headcount? Like, what did it look like in 2006 when you ended up?
Well, to float, we merged with another business called Pro, or finance professionals, law professionals, etc. And back on that first day when we were in the office, 3 people, we'd gone out looking for funding,
right?
And we'd got funding, 40% of the business, and it was Pro who had funded us, 3 individuals there. So we got the merger, which the whole merger was leading to a float, was with them. So they were both businesses knew each other reasonably well. And then the float happened a year after that merger. So
what were the numbers looking like at the point of merger in terms of headcount, NFI?
Well, I think at the point of the when we merged, it was probably both businesses had a headcount of about 100.
Right.
The profit, EBITDA, when you put the two businesses together, was somewhere around 4.5 million quid.
Solid.
I can't remember what net fee income was, but it was probably, I'm guessing it was around 25 million. They were sizable businesses.
And what was your role in that? Did you stay as a sales guy, or did you?
So I was the sales director. Following the merger, I ran the RPO business.
Really? I didn't know about it. When did Hydrogen get involved in, or was that the name?
So it was named Hydrogen when
you merged.
Yeah. We as part, we did an exercise to choose what colour the business should be, and what type of car it would be if it was a car, and all that kind of stuff. And I can't remember where Hydrogen came from, but it came from somewhere.
And it worked. And they're a big player now. They're a well-known brand, and
well, they haven't done as well since I left, Sean. Obviously,
of course.
No,
but
really,
they're a name
really
everyone
struggled.
recognises. I think.
Yeah.
They've got their own. I know their office on Eastcheap's got their name engraved in the wall, right? So, if you look back on the 6 years up to the float, again, thinking about what people want to hear about Barnaby is what can they learn? What information could you give, or what stories have you got that people could learn from that 6 years? Because you were so raw, but you still managed to get to 100 and float a business. So what could you share?
Well, we talk now. Everyone, the whole discussion is around purpose, mission, what it's all about. I just remember having firmly planted in my brain exactly what I was trying to do. I had such a clear vision. Okay. And I couldn't, if you ask me where that came from, I wouldn't exactly know. Part of it is, that back to that need. Mm-hmm. There was an insecurity driving me, but at the same time, I had a really clear idea as to what Project Partners was. And I was quick to articulate that. So, beyond that, there's loads of ingredients of building a successful business, but I really think that if you can, just remember that passion I had. I went so much. That extra mile was just never a problem for me, and I think that was infectious. People wanted to do. Other people wanted to do it. They felt part of something that was special, and then it just became a culture that worked.
So you're 32 roughly when it floats, and And what happened to your life at that point?
Well, I thought I made it, Sean.
Well, you did. You did make it.
Well, it didn't make it for very long.
But realistically, what is that day like when your share value is realised, you've got cash? What does it feel like?
Well, there's a few things about a float that lots of people wouldn't be aware of. So, a float. I think a float, and I was certainly in this camp. A float was like, it's the crowning pinnacle. You floated a business, and I often use that as part of my own credentials. I floated a business, and it rarely fails to impress. But it's a bit of a misnomer, because the reality is the business is listed, which means that in theory anyone can buy into it.
Yeah.
But it depends how many people have bought into that company as to how free float it is. And the reality was that Hydrogen floated about 20% of the shares. So I made a bit of money, but I wasn't away with the fairies on this one. And there was quite a journey ahead. And the float was simply the kind of record keeping of how much that company was worth, etc. I mean, fairly shortly after the float, we had a financial crisis.
Yeah, 2010.
And
2007.
The float price was, this is kind of ancient history, but the float price was probably about £2.30. And by the time Lehman's had gone bust, the price of the Hydrogen share price was probably closer to 15p.
Wow.
So I certainly thought I was on the way. I bought into, one of the reasons I was happy to leave the business, because I'd been there 7-8 years, was because I felt that it was in safe hands. As it turns out, perhaps the hands weren't as safe as they could have been. But that wasn't, by then it was not much.
So why did you decide to leave? What was going on in your personal life or head that made you think it was time for you to move on?
Well, I had, once you have a merger, there's, without going into the nitty-gritties of mergers, and there's a whole lot of corporate shenanigans that was probably going on at Hydrogen that is definitely ancient history.
Yeah.
Suddenly it wasn't, it wasn't, for whatever reason, it wasn't the company that I had set up. I was suddenly part of a bigger group. I've always been pretty entrepreneurial, and there'll probably be a lot of listeners to this that will feel that they're working for companies that it doesn't resonate anymore, or perhaps they've never had the feeling that it resonates, and something just, it cracked. But I was also, refer to need, but even if I wasn't even if I didn't have 10 million quid in the bank, I had a lot of money in the bank. I was a single guy. I owned my flat in Battersea. I'm a keen skier, and
about the age I am now. Yeah, it's a pretty exciting time in life.
It was great. Yeah. And
what did you do?
Day one, I was on 12 months' notice.
Yeah.
So when I
was in garden leave.
In gardening leave.
That's not too bad then.
No, it wasn't too bad. So it was probably around about February when I finally managed to leave. So 3 months into that, 3 months into my notice period, and I just got in a cab, booked a trip to Kashmir in India, and went skiing in Kashmir.
Wow.
It was wow. It was wow.
What a place to go and do it.
And my new boss said to me, "Please, Barnaby, keep in touch." Of course, in Kashmir, there's no phones, no nothing. Yeah. So I didn't keep in touch. As far as I know, he never rang me.
So what was that? What went on for the rest of the year? You didn't stay there for a year, did you?
Oh, well, actually, the thing that probably gave me the confidence to actually leave, because it is a big step.
Yeah, I bet.
And it was emotional. The thing that probably gave me the confidence was I'd bought a property, which was a big house in Battersea. It was a wreck. I'd got a very good deal on it, and I ended up building a project. I went through the property development piece, and that was, again, it was slightly ropey given the time of pre-financial crisis, but that was probably sometimes you need another gig to focus your mind on.
Yeah.
And I'm a fairly visual character, so when I get that thing in my mind, I'm good to go. But if I haven't got that thing in my mind,
so is that what you worked on in the year, or is that what you did before you left?
That's
you got that ready, and
I bought it probably before I left, and then I ended up developing that and developed another property,
right?
And then the crunch really came.
Right. So you had a couple. How long were you out of proper professional work and just?
Well, I was never out of professional work, Sean.
But working in a recruitment corporation, and how long were you out for? Because Venquis is 2011, right? I was 2010.
Yeah. So just briefly, I I left Hydrogen Group in 2007. I ended up building a property development team. So I developed a couple of properties which roughly had, the 300 grand spend on each of them. And I set up something called the Animal Art Fair. So I've got a great mate who broke his neck when he was 26, a guy called Jamie Pogg. And the two of us came up with the idea of an Animal Art Fair, which works very well if you're badly disabled, because you don't have to do anything except to get the artists there and then attend the fair when it happens. I also spent, I got properly credit crunched. Imagine the Lehman's was doing its stuff. I had a couple of properties which I'd funded based upon the shares at Hydrogen Group. The shares at Hydrogen Group were now not worth the 230, they're worth 15p. So the bank RBS were right on my case. I had a bill. There was a point I went to the Ritz Casino and won some money at the Ritz Casino, won $4,000 at the Ritz Casino, and that's how I managed to pay the builder. I managed to
Did you go there with that mentality as well?
I went there with a real devil. God only knows what I'm going to do. Kind of mentality.
A few drinks at that.
The thing, it wasn't. With hindsight, I had to wangle my way out of the situation I was in, but it wasn't diabolical because the houses I would get over the line. Yeah. I had them rented. One of the houses I managed to rent without having a staircase in there.
Shows how many people live in London.
Well, the Spanish family, they needed somewhere to stay. Took them around. In fact, I didn't even take them around the house. I showed them the pictures of the house, and then she looked through the kind of ground floor. There's no staircase. Hadn't gone in, and they took the house.
And what happened? Did you get a ladder up to the next floor?
She never saw the upstairs. The first time she saw the upstairs was when she turned up with her bags.
Oh wow! Did you have to build it while they were in there then?
No, they were renting around the corner, but it gave me a bit of a deadline.
I bet.
Yeah,
I bet. So a couple of years of, like you say, doing different things, property, animal, sorting out your finances. And when did the whole idea and the plan around Venquis come to you?
So 2010, I got married, and my wife was probably saying, when are you going to get out of the house?
Yeah.
When are you going to go make some money? And when I looked at where I had the most success, it was recruitment. Yeah. So I'd been reluctant to set up again, really? But my experience of setting up project partners days was literally I would be in the office at 7:30 in the morning, and I wouldn't leave till 11, and at least a couple of nights a week I would be out with people. So it's pretty grueling, and I didn't. I wasn't enthusiastically heading down that path, but if hydrogen had gone booming, I might, Venquis may never have happened. But there was clearly an opportunity for change, transformation. There was no one else doing it. No. And Venquis had, it was first mover advantage. There's quite a lot of others around there now. Yeah. I met up with Steve Garner, and the timing was good.
So you and Steve had you hired Steve, or how did that come about?
I'd hired Steve at Hydrogen Group, or Project Partners.
Yeah. So he was still there, dealing with what you'd left, basically.
Picking up the bits.
Had he already left? Had he already left, or was he still working when you?
He'd already left.
Right. And he was already thinking of doing something himself.
Well, I think he was looking at his options. I can't remember. You have to get Steve Garner on here.
Yeah, we'll get him in a second.
Ask him the question. He, I get on really well with Steve, and he's a bit yin and yang in terms of our skill sets, which does lead to, in the early days, led to a few clashes.
Really?
Probably healthy clashes, but no, he was what I needed. I'm fairly aware of what my faults are. Time enables you to work it out, and Steve has strengths where perhaps I don't. So it's worked quite well.
I don't know if there's a book I've read, and I've mentioned lots on the podcast called Traction, right, by a guy called Gino Wickman. It's all about how to put structure into a chaotic small businesses, basically. And he talks about the typical founders of successful businesses. And there's two people, and one is typically the visionary, which is you, and the other one is known as the integrator, which would be Steve. Yep. And I think with me and Amma, it's the same. I'm the visionary, he's the integrator. It's a very similar relationship. And I think one without the other, if it was just you running around, it'd be chaos. Yep. And if it was if just Steve, it could be a bit stale in the
Yep.
early days.
Yep.
And I think it did. I mean, I can only remember coming in a year or so in, and you could tell there was strengths and the strengths complemented each other.
Yep.
So how did you decide on the name? Because I get asked a lot about the name Hoxo was inspired by the name Venquis, right?
Oh, good.
Because you guys were one name. It was one word that was made up that, apart from being compared to Vanquish Bank, I remember ringing up, people were, and you typed it in, it was always at the top of search engines. So me and Amma said, look, we wanted to come up with a word that was made up that would go to the same thing. So we came up with, well, I'm not going to say it again, but we came up with Noxo and we changed it to Hoxo.
Right.
How did you come up with Venquis?
So we were after a word that had 6, 7, 8 letters.
Mm-hmm.
We could own the various .com.co.uk, etc., and would have suggestive meaning, but would be our own word, so to speak. And I actually don't know how we came up with Venquis per se. We had a whole list of words, and there was a bit of evolving and so on. But the name Venquis has worked really well for us because there's something Latin which has a sort of solidity to it. There is some. If you split it, it could be Venquiz, as in who's coming.
Yeah, yeah. And
Venquis also has vanquish, winning, etc.
Yeah.
So it's worked really well, but it's it's really come off the top of a. And we had endless meetings around what are we going to call ourselves. We went through that process of what roads do we live on, what roads do our friends live on, what are our middle names, what are random. I'm sure plenty of listeners will have gone through the same stuff, and.
It is a big moment, though. I think
it is a big moment.
When you're saying a bit, I always say we bought so many domains that were just shit, but
you've done very well with a four-letter word.
But Hoxo Media, we could never have got Hoxo on its own. Someone in Spain had bought it, I think.
No, but we know you as Hoxo, right?
Yeah, it's definitely synonymous with the business, but it's still Hoxo Media. Was how we had. I think we had Hoxo.co.uk was going to be the recruitment company originally, and then we changed it to Hoxo Media. But so you come up with that, you and Steve. When did it all actually start? What was it? Remind me exactly.
February 2011.
That was it. So it was just the two of you in a.
No, I put quite a lot of money into getting Venquis going. Mm-hmm. We hired quite a lot of people from day one. We took an office overlooking Trafalgar Square, which was awesome, frankly, because by 2012 we had the Jubilee, we had the Olympics, and we had an office looking over all the events that went on in Trafalgar Square. And we probably weren't 6 people on day one, but we went for it.
Yeah.
Which was partly probably partly I had the money, and partly I didn't want to sit in an office with 2 people and just it's not go through the phone book anymore, is it? But you know what I mean.
Just try and do deals on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inevitably you do.
You still did deals in the early days.
Yeah, no, I love doing deals. I
think you had the record for the biggest deal. Still,
maybe. I think I don't anymore.
Yeah. It was 65 grand, I think, the biggest one.
60 grand.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember you just popped it up. No one knew about it. So you hired a few people day one. Again, let's go back. What was that? What was the second incarnation of your recruitment career like?
What was it like? Well, I knew what I was doing. The more magnetic a brand you can be as a I'm probably not the most magnetic brand in the recruitment sector, but I've got credibility that people brings people to at least hear what I've got to say, and I think that helped. And certainly Steve has that too. But the crux of it is you're still in an office with a plan, and you've got to execute that plan. So it's not that different to the first business, and it's probably not that different to the next one. You're surrounded by better people, but again, we're going through. It's lots of hiring, lots of meeting people, just treading the streets.
Were you still in the earliest days? You were just out there doing business development as normal, but this time passing it back to people to fill jobs.
Partly, but I was the area that I'd always worked was investment management. Technology. So I picked up a lot of my old contacts, and a lot of people were kind enough to take my call, and perhaps a few people said, well, Barnaby, we haven't heard much from you for a few years, have I? But lots of people were quite happy to just pick up the relationship. I think they understood how it worked, and so we got on with it.
And Steve was left in the office to
Steve did our first deal.
He did something. Wasn't it like a some kind of air conditioning engineer or something?
No, I think it was a hotel business. I can't remember what the job was.
It was something random though, I remember.
Yeah, but it was yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You have a vision, you have a plan, you do everything you possibly can, and then I can't help thinking of that Tyson thing. Everyone's got a plan until they're punched. So
That's true.
And then you just get on with it.
So how did you finish the first year? Can you remember?
Oh, we lost quite a lot of money, I think.
Really?
Well, we probably broke even, but I'd put it. I invested quite a lot of money to get Venquis up and running as quickly as I possibly could. I really spotted there's a real opportunity with Venquis. I mean, the opportunity is even bigger now than it was then, but change and transformation was something which the world desperately needed. There were, we quickly won accounts like JP Morgan, Aon, some big accounts that they liked our story.
Yeah, I remember. So I joined in the Olympics, right? So my first week was the end of the Olympics in September, but I came and interviewed in the week where Jessica Ennis and Mo Farah won that race. And I remember, I spoke to you in Australia, having sat there after a long day at Randstad,
right.
Melbourne. It was about 7 at night, and you were full of beans telling me about business transformation. And I'd recruited project management and business analysis, but no one in Australia had ever packaged it up like that. I'd never heard those words, business change. Change management to me was a change control board, technical, just basically looking through your IT support change.
Yep.
So it was. I bought into the vision clearly because to me it was a startup that you guys were the first, and that was infectious. And that, I mean, I don't want to tell the story, but when I came in that second year, it felt like we were on quite an upward trajectory.
Yep.
How do you remember those second and third years?
Well, we were on an upward trajectory. I mean, you were a key employee that joined at a time when you were opening new markets. It was just. I mean, there's no other way of describing it. It was just really exciting.
Yeah.
You're just out and about, meeting new people. Someone's coming back to the office, having won whatever it is, number of deals, and then conversations lead to suddenly new accounts, and then before you know it, we're operating in Germany. It wasn't long before we were placing people into Cologne, Munich. Now we've got a Munich office. It was frenetic.
So what made you think of Germany as a logical place to go?
Well, we had a chap called Matt Gesellschroeder who was from Germany. So
he was someone you knew already, right?
He was someone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of our founders. Joined at the beginning.
Yeah.
And Germany is a huge market. There are obviously challenges. How good's your German? Mine's pretty poor. I've tried. I've got the language tapes, but it's not good. But German, I mean, it's also, I just think it's just doing different stuff, isn't it? I mean, look at you. You've come out of recruitment. You're now running a successful media company. I mean, it's daunting to begin with when you take a new direction. And
I mean, none of you guys probably believed what we were doing. Everyone thought we were crazy, and even we thought. I mean, I personally just had a vision, and I thought it was in the last 6 months of Vanquish when I was looking at YouTube, Instagram, and just seeing what people were doing and thinking, there's got to be ways in which we can bring this to the recruitment process, right? Because I know you could still sit there and build 700, £1 million today doing what we've always done. You can do it.
Yep.
But I don't think in 5 years' time that'll still be the way. I think there'll be so many other ways. And I had to get Amar out of planning a recruitment company and to get him to... He was like, you're a fucking lunatic. He just completely... But he did trust me. We had that much experience together that he trusted my opinion that if I felt something was going to work, he was like, well, I'm not going to go against you. And that was important, I think, that we had that trust. But I felt like one of the reasons I joined Venquis was about the face-to-face interaction that you promoted. And I remember spending hours walking up and down, well, originally like Northumberland Avenue, but then later Fleet Street up to the city. And
it was like a Keep Fit program, wasn't it?
My step count at Venquis would have been about 25,000. But I don't think there's many, there wasn't many I was talking to when I came to the UK in 2012 that were promoting that. They were all just talking about numbers you could make, but it'd be sat in an office ringing people globally. And I don't know, I felt like the Lloyd's of London market was like the most amazing market where you could just walk around, have coffees all day and get paid for it. It was incredible. Was that something that you consciously did, or did that just naturally happen?
What, the face-to-face?
Yeah, did you say like when we started this business we're going to have an army of guys on the ground running around these markets, or did it just happen organically?
Well, central London office space is expensive, so and there are plenty of other places to set up. So it was always a face-to-face business. But also, I guess as the leader of the business, it's the way I operate best. So, I can do it on a phone, but I always think the best thing is to get face-to-face. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're selling, you need to get in front of the person. And recruitment more than anything. We also, recruitment has become, it's always been competitive, but it's becoming, certainly in the UK, more and more competitive. And any differentiator is huge. And the number of clients that will say, what's the candidate like? And to be able to answer that, having actually met them, I think makes a big difference. And it keeps us fit doing it.
100%. So at what point did Venquis start making you money? Did you start seeing profit in the business?
It was pretty clear from day one that Venquis was going to be successful. The reason we weren't profitable in year one is because we were spending it on websites, hiring, new office, etc. But by year 2, year 3, we were on that trajectory. Change and transformation is a great niche. We knew what we were doing. We had a great team, and it worked for us.
What did you look for in people? What was your unique attributes, or what did you when you interviewed people? What did you look for? Because I think that's probably the biggest problem for a lot of recruiters is trying to replicate themselves. I know that many owners that have got very profitable businesses, but there's 2 or 3 of them because they can't replicate themselves and they don't really know what they're looking for in themselves, in other people, other than I could just do it faster myself. But you quickly went beyond that and grew people. So what did you look for?
Well, I think the first thing's leaders. So I'm one of the leaders of the business, but I can't be the only one. I could be the main one, but I need other people that can lead. Actually taking risks on people. So one of the people who has really inspired me, and just reminding myself to watch his podcast, is a guy called Rasmus Ankerson.
The Goldman Effect.
Yeah,
right?
Goldman Effect. And there's a great thing on YouTube, which only takes 10 minutes to watch, and it's one of those nice scribbled type presentations, which is all about Goldman Effect, which for listeners is very briefly is the idea that talent is absolutely anywhere. So rather than go out to the competitor recruitment agencies where you are basically trying to hire someone that has done the job somewhere else, but you want them to come and do the same job for you, which might work, but it doesn't always work.
Yeah.
It's going out and trying to find the person that might be in the bar that offers great service that would make a great recruiter, but currently they're working at whatever it is, coffee shop or the bar, or they might come out of the armed forces. It doesn't really matter where they come from. But that concept that talent's everywhere and that actually you're meeting it all the time. It's not just the person that's walking in for the interview. It's the person you're meeting on the train or whatever.
So tell us a bit about that, because I remember you hired a few people that you've met in weird and wonderful ways. Tell us a story of someone you've brought in that came through that methodology.
Well, the methodology, I don't think we've applied specifically to an individual. It's more of a methodology in terms of a strategy as a company. So trying to just be, and it fits in very well with the diversity piece as well, as in you're just, it doesn't matter what they look like, where they're from or anything else. And we've had, as a result of that, we've hired professional footballers, ex-sniper in the Royal Marines. The list is pretty endless.
You managed to get the guy who ran your boot camp in Hyde Park.
Yes, so the guy who ran the boot camp in Hyde Park. So there's been some really interesting people who come into Venquis. They haven't all worked out, and lots of people have worked out, but they're not there anymore. Because I think the other thing to respect is that sometimes a person's journey at a particular company is for X number of, hopefully it's for X number of years. If it's only a matter of months, it probably isn't a great journey, but there are plenty of people that do a great job for you, you included, Sean, that then aren't there anymore.
I think
they
Steve,
move on.
So I remember Steve saying to me early on, to be honest, Barney, you said your journey with us is your journey with us, right? And it could come to an end at any point, but we're gonna value you to the point where it does, right? And you did, and that that will always. I think I'll always bring that into running my business now. There's so much I learned from those days that I believe are evident in Hoxo.
Well, you don't want to lose the great person, do you?
No, you don't.
It's a bit heartbreaking when you realise that's the end of the journey. But
you've got to remember it can happen, and if it's for the right reasons, for them wanting to do their own thing. Like I lost a guy this year, Hisham, who started a business, and he wasn't gonna when he told me he was leaving, he wasn't gonna tell me he was leaving, and we were just having a catch up,
right?
And he won't mind me saying this, but. I kept asking him, what's going on? I kept probing him because I just wasn't satisfied with the answer. And then he just spurted it out. I was like, I can't lie to you. I'm going to quit and I'm going to do my own thing. And I was like, fuck. I was like, I've seen this coming. I've literally been in the bottom of my stomach for about 2 months that he's not happy, but he's so busy running around. I was planning a wedding. I was planning a house move. I was trying to, we had issues at our founder level, all sorts going on that it slipped. And then he let me know and I was like, fuck. And look, we deal with it. But the first thing I thought was, you know what, you're going to go and start your own business, which he's gone and done, and he's done a fucking good job. Who am I to hold him back? Because I've done that with you.
Yep.
I had to say those words to you. It's a difficult process for both parties. So,
well, the other thing though, worth bearing in mind, is often when that person leaves, it creates an opportunity
for other people.
Other people, but not just for the other people, also an opportunity to change the business a bit. An opportunity. I mean, it's just opportunities spring up. So not you specifically, but when someone that seems to be a key employee has left, it's created, actually great things have come of it.
Yeah.
So
one of the things I think
it never feels like it at the time.
No. One of the things I remember about the business is we were very niche. We had niche teams, contract perm, focusing on we were industry specific, then we were vertical specific, and then we were contractor. But it was super niche. How has that evolved over the last few years? So since the early inception to now, how have you managed to keep up with the markets and keep growing the business in as a methodology that way?
We have, there are loads of different stakeholders in a recruitment business, but 3 really important ones, probably in this order, are employees, clients, candidates.
Yeah.
And we have we've split the candidate and the client piece so that we have people who are dedicated to the clients, and we've got people who are dedicated to the candidates. And in fact, we also have people who are dedicated to the employees as well. So that's evolved. That has evolved out of that niche, the niche structure that we had before. But that evolution wasn't necessarily. We wouldn't have said 3 or 4 years ago that was where it was going to end up.
No.
But actually, you look at a lot of the big recruiting firms, and actually they have, to use the lingo, it's 180.
I think it's the way forward,
degrees.
Personally, because I think it drives accountability more than anything else.
It definitely drives accountability. It definitely means that people know, they know what they're doing. They're very specialist in what they're doing. It means you get less lumpy sales. As a company, we're much quicker on responding to vacancies. The ratios of candidates, CVs going to interview, etc., are much better because we've got people totally focused on it, and you don't have that stop-start.
No,
but you do have to be a certain size of business to get to that. We would have done it earlier, I think, if we had our time again.
Yeah. So, how has the business progressed? So you were at year 8?
I think we might be year 8.
Year 8. So where are you at right now?
We are now about 70 people. We are working in every country across Northern Europe.
Wow.
Although except Scotland. We have, this year we'll turn over somewhere upwards of 30 million.
Brilliant.
And sales will be circa 6 million, EBITDA circa 1 million.
Yeah, solid. So
yeah, nice business, good platform for the next stage.
Yeah, 100%. And so before we move on to the next phase, what would you say are your biggest learnings over that 8 years? Like, what would you say? Let's say, what have you got wrong? What would you say I messed up?
It might be quicker to say what we've got right. Look, it's a people business. So, we've hired the wrong people. We've held on to people too long when you know that it's not right, but you want it to be right. We've always been a caring business. There have been people that we've certainly supported when they've needed support. I can think of one person had pretty serious depression that we kept on for a long, long time, did everything we possibly could. So that wouldn't be an example of keeping someone too long.
Yeah.
But there are times when it just doesn't work. I mean, the list is endless, Sean, really. Every decision you take, you wish you'd taken it earlier.
It's a good point. It's a very good point.
And often those bad decisions, good to get them out of the way, right? You just need to
learn from them.
Well, you hope you do.
You do. I mean, we've made some shockers, and you think, how the fuck did we do that? Why did we do that?
Yeah.
But we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't do that. And you got to, I think we put our values on the wall, and one of them is we love the journey. Right? Every one of them starts with we, because I believe in the unity of the team. It's not about any individual, and we love the journey is one of our key values, because I just think, as much as I've got probably the visionary piece from a lot of it from you, and I'm always talking about this connecting global marketing with sales across the industry. It ain't about the end result. It's about the day to day. And if you don't love the journey, if you don't love the process, if you don't revel in the mistakes as well as the wins, like what's the point? Like,
completely agree with you.
What's the fucking point?
Yeah.
If it's the end game.
But I think that's of a bygone era, isn't it? Just this is the target. That's what we're going to do now. Just make it happen.
I think there's loads of businesses in our industry like that.
Well, I think you're probably right.
There's shitloads of them.
Yeah.
Like I speak to them every day, and so many say to me, all they talk about is money. So I'm like, why are you doing what you're doing? Well, we want to make money. We want to make this million. I'm like, yeah, but no one joins your business because they want to make you loads of money. No. No one works with you as a client because they want to make you loads of money.
No.
There has to be more to it than that. Like, transforming industries and giving new businesses the platform to treat the way they change the way they work with their customers was always the sort of stuff we used to talk about. It was enabling change for
I think
changing lives.
If you do change transformation, it should be positive change transformation. I mean, look at there's a climate summit going on right now. I think at Venquis we've got a real responsibility to ensure that our clients are doing the right things the right way, and it's a response. It's an onus on us to do, because approaching the world in any other way would just be irresponsible.
Hiring,
have
you seen a change in hiring younger staff now as opposed to maybe 10 years ago, and what motivates them? Because you hear a lot online about less money motivation, more about charitable and making an impact and social community worth and all the rest of it. Have you seen that in recruitment? Have you seen a different type of person joining your business for different reasons, as opposed to just we're going to go on holiday every year?
Well, at Venquis we have a holiday every year.
I know you do. Yeah.
And nearly everyone comes on it. So, I mean, look, there of course motivations have changed, but one of the things that strikes me is it's tough to be young in London at the moment, because the graduate salaries aren't a great deal more than they were.
No.
House prices are rocketing, rents are high. There's a lot of job uncertainty, and I think one of the things that it's great to talk about millennials that can have a job for 6 months, a year, 2 years, and then they move on to the next, and they're upskilling, etc. But the downside of that is that an awful lot of companies don't train their staff because they don't expect their staff to be there that long.
Right.
So it's become a world of deep uncertainty. I mean, it's an election day today.
Yeah.
So I think, well, I'm not predicting any results, but I think that we are seeing a lot of uncertainty around the world, and I think that plays out. So are people motivated differently? Of course they're motivated, worried about the climate, etc. But I think they're also deeply worried about their own finances, their own opportunities. Talk about artificial intelligence, machine learning, automation, all of this. I mean, and I'm no expert on it, but it feels to me like there's a wave of change coming. And it's a wave of change which Venquis is, of course, right at the front of. But from an employee perspective, from a graduate perspective, I think that's daunting stuff. And I think as business leaders, we have a massive responsibility to try and support those people.
100%.
It's tough because
I remember when I got the job with you guys, it was September, and I've mentioned it a few times, but I was dating a girl who was in Reading, and she was doing recruitment and doing very well. And I was with her for about 6 months, and I didn't realize until we broke up how much money she was not giving me, but she was contributing to like things we were doing. She was paying for this, paying for that. And living in Clapham, if you remember, I lived with Emma and a mate of mine, and we were out every weekend. And I didn't realize just how much money I didn't have and how much I'd been spending. So when we broke up in the February, I remember I was already on a trajectory of doing well, but if you saw my billings that year go through the roof, it was because I realised, fuck. Like I looked at I remember going and sitting with Claire and going, I think I've got 300 quid a month after everything goes out, before I've fucking eaten.
Yep.
And it was, I've
got
to make this happen. Yeah, and this was about February, and I think by April, May, I was banging in deals for fun. And
but Sean, you're a good recruiter. There are lots of people that, for whatever reason, haven't followed that trajectory, and that's and recruitment is, a lot of people talk about falling into recruitment. There are a lot of people that end up falling out of recruitment, and where they end up, I frankly, I don't know, but it's not a good place. You've sold your way out of that problem.
But I could have been one of them people that fell out. Well, but it's that moment. It's kind of have that realization moment where you're like, I've got to make this happen now, and this is an actual platform for me to make this happen. Yep. But yeah, like you say, I don't think salaries have changed much since then, and everything else has gone up massively. It's tough. It's really tough. So where does that? Obviously, you've changed roles. So you were CEO. Now you're chairman, and you've got something else. So what's gone on over the last year or two that's meant you've changed your role?
So, well, I've got a very extremely competent business partner in Stephen Garner. Mm-hmm. So he's given me the opportunity.
Apart from the fact he supports West Brom, but we'll leave that out.
Yeah. So he's given me the opportunity to perhaps start looking at other things. And you know what it's like when your mind wanders, you start coming up with other ideas. Mm-hmm. And it didn't take me very long to look at, and my own experience. I've had the meeting people they're good headhunters. They're working in the competition, they're working in the recruitment sector or search industry, and they're thinking perhaps they're in their late 30s. They're decent billers. They stand on their own 2 feet, but they're thinking, what's next? And the what's next is they set up their own business. They work for another competitor at perhaps a slightly higher basic salary and a bit better commission. And that's rough. There are lots of shades in between, but there's a gap. And I think the gap is to create a business that is all about freelance headhunters. For those people that can stand on their own 2 feet, they want all the apparatus and support and training community, etc., that a decent sized search firm would have, but they also want autonomy. They want to take their kids to school or turn up at sports day. They want to, they don't want to have to ask permission to go skiing, and why should they? And they're decent billers. They're confident in their ability to bill, and they want a fair share of it. And there's in the recruitment sector, you see a bit of a race to zero. There are lots of people that, a Venquis staff will receive messages through LinkedIn offering them better basic or better commission or whatever, but that's a kind of a race to zero. But actually, it seems to me there's another option, which is why I've thought about it a lot. It took me a long time to draw out the business plan, etc. But that's what Collaborate Search is about. So
it's how would you describe it then? What's the strapline or how do you describe it? Yeah, what's the best way to describe it?
Curated platform for freelance headhunters.
Brilliant. So, and when you say curated, what does that mean?
So it's not a LinkedIn or any other platform where you put in your details, sign up and go. It's a business with a vision, values, culture, and that means it needs the right people. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to work for everyone. So that's the curated piece. The platform piece is having everything that you possibly need in order to be able to do the job, the headhunting job. And then the freelance piece is, it doesn't pay any basic salaries. The take home is up to 75% of your billings. And that's
so if I'm sat there in a business today listening to this episode and I'm thinking, look, 2020, I'd like to do my own thing. I haven't got the business partner potentially. Like you said, you really needed that person, and I'm the same. Like without Amar, I would have been shit in the early days. So if you're a good salesperson, you know your job, but you'd like to have everything else taken care of, and you can just do your best but also have the benefit. When you say benefits of the team and the network and the training, what can you give us a bit more info? What does that actually mean? What would you offer?
Well, although a big part of setting up a business is the technology, mm-hmm. The infrastructure, etc. How do you manage those contractors? How do you do the invoices? How do I chase up invoice? All those questions which, mean, I'm on my third time and I'm still not sure of the answers. So, the person
Don't tell people that.
Well, I'm working them out.
Yeah.
So the person that works in, it works in recruitment, they're billing a lot of money, and that's their one thing. The way, there's a great book called The One Thing.
Yeah.
That's their one thing. Then, why would we expect them to be able to build all the administrative pieces around them? So
it's not necessarily your skills, is it?
Quite. But then the other thing is, if you do take that decision, I'm going to set up on my own. I'm sure I'll find someone to join me at some point. So I set up whatever it is, limited company. Then you're bogged down doing all of that admin, which means that you might be a £500,000 biller one moment. You're a £150,000 biller, and it's not because you're any less of a headhunter. It's because you're bogged down doing all this stuff. So, and I think the answer to that is partly, it's an emotional crutch, having people around you that are doing the same job, got the same problems, that are prepared to share. I think that a lot of people working for themselves forget the self-development piece. So they're always what they are, and being part of a platform like Collaborate Search, where you can actually participate in training, self-development, career visioning, sharing tips, etc., or even just getting together for a Christmas party. I think all of that stuff's really valuable. So I mean, the community is a word which has been a slightly,
it's been done to death.
It's been done to death. But I think being part of something in that community. And then the other thing is actually that less than 1% of brands in the recruitment sector ever realize any value for that brand. We on LinkedIn and everywhere else, we see loads of success stories. We don't see the failures. And a lot of them aren't failures. They're just, no one's going to pay any money for that brand that you've spent all your time building up.
Yeah.
So if you look back on your life, and life's short, why are you spending all your time building up that brand? Why don't you be part of something that enables you to live the life you want to lead and put your effort into that?
Yeah.
That means you're building a legacy for your family. You've got time to share all the events that, I've got 2 kids. So I guess part of it is having 2 kids. I'd like to spend a bit more time with them.
Your net profit will be high if you're good, because your outgoings are covered in 25%. So you should have a really strong net profit. And what would you expect that person would what would they get from you personally if they sign up to the business? Because they're going to listen to this and might expect, I'm interested in Barnaby's story is great. I'd love to be connected to Barnaby and help me out. What time, or would they get any exposure with you? Yeah,
they'd get. Sean, I'm back to the room with 3 people again. It's it's a shared ownership model. The 25% that Collaborate retains is, we don't get anything if the deals aren't done. So, I think in terms of profiles, the types of people that will consider joining Collaborate, they will be those people that are currently working in established recruitment businesses, and they want more, they want autonomy, etc. They might be nervous about moving into their own business, and they want, hand-holding's not quite what it is, but they want all the support. And there's not a great deal in the recruitment sector that I haven't personally done. And what I haven't personally done, I know people who have. And I wouldn't even describe Collaborate as a search firm. I'd describe it as a training business. Because the reality is, it's all about the training. That contingency recruiter that wants to do retain, that person, whatever it is, they want to grow.
Yeah.
And that's I'm not promising I'm not promising I'm running every training session, but we've worked together. I'm an all-in type of character.
100%, yeah. What do you see as the future then? What's the vision for this business? Where do you want it to be in 5 years' time?
Well, the target we have is to have a membership, we call them members, of 250 people. I hope that we can reach that within 5 years. I think we can probably reach it much quicker than 5 years. We're starting in the UK, but it's not going to be very long before we are spreading out across Europe, and I think that'll happen organically. And then probably the other thing worth mentioning about Collaborate is that if you are an employee working for someone, there are 4 bits of value. I'm talking about the cash. There are 4 areas that you add value. One's the deals you do. The others, the candidates you bring in that are placed by
Other people, yeah.
you or someone else. The other is the business that you refer. So you are a media headhunter, but you bring in technology business. You might not deliver it, someone else can. And then the fourth, which is massive, are the employees, members in Collaborate's case that you refer. And in Collaborate Search, every single one of those is rewarded.
Right.
And I think that
you've got a unique plan as such that you get rewarded for all those 4 areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that matters. I mean that's
100%. But I think look, I'm sure you're open for anyone to ask you questions via LinkedIn. Would be the best place to reach out, and obviously I'll tag you in all of this. I think it's a really cool. I mean, look, I know you. This is your 3rd time. I've got no doubt you're going to be successful. I've been on the front line with you, and I know how you operate. So I've got every faith it's going to be a success. Hopefully, some listeners, even if they're not interested in Collaborate, are you open to people reaching out to you, Barnaby?
I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah,
of course.
I hope they do.
Just say hello.
Before we go, I want to bring this in more and more now. Look, you're an inspirational guy. You've had amazing stories. You've mentioned the Goldman effect, Rasmus Ankersen. I know you built a lot of the Venquis mindset on that. What other things have you read or are reading currently that you think some of the listeners might benefit from?
I read a lot. What else have I read? The One Thing is a good book. It's inspired a business which has been partly an inspiration for Collaborate Search called Keller Williams,
right? Which
is a massive property business for freelance property agents. That's definitely worth a read.
Is that all about focusing on one thing?
Yeah,
and being.
But it's focusing on one thing is very easy to say, but it has some good toolkit in there. And then actually, despite all the reading I do, I draw inspiration. You're very kind to say I'm an inspiration to you, but you're an inspiration to me. I draw inspiration from the people around me, and I think it's easy to stick your head in the sand and think you've got it right, but in my experience, that is not the way forward. So it's to allow yourself. Learning. Well, it's to allow yourself to be challenged. So say that it might whatever you're thinking. Sometimes you've got to say it. And it's like the decision that you make that you get wrong. You know that feeling, you've got it, it's in your mind. If you say it, you might get shot down and you might deserve to be shot down, but it's an important exercise to go through.
100%. If I'm, say, 2 years away from starting a recruitment company and I'm sat listening to this episode, is there one piece of advice you would give someone as to why or how or what they should do to be successful in the future as a recruitment owner?
The one piece of advice pre-setting up their business.
Not called Collaborate, because that'll be a byproduct.
No. That's I think I can only talk from my personal experience. I'm a visionary. I'm a visual person. So I will start with what's it going to look like? What's it all about? And I'll paint the picture. And I'll do it. I wish I was more artistic, but I'll do it in my head. And then it's a plan. How am I going to get from where I am to that point? And I'm not that detail orientated and I used to think that was a fault, but I don't. I think that's actually a massive strength because I don't get stuck in the weeds. Okay, actually, I don't know how that works. So let's move on. So I think have a vision. If you haven't got a vision, it's hard to achieve something. It's like if you don't know where you're going, you ain't going to get where you want to get to.
But it's also, I think what I picked up from that though is understand your own strengths, right? Because not everyone is going to be like you, Barney. They're going to be more detail oriented. So if that's the case, do you have anyone else that you can leverage or work with that might be a bit more visionary or a bit more, do you know what I mean? So you can balance those and you're not just too stuck in one mindset.
Well, I think whichever way you get to that point, it's creating the vision. However you do it, it's creating what the end point is going to look like. What you're trying to
start with the end in mind.
And there's plenty of books around.
Have you read the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?
I've read it so long ago.
It's so good.
It's good.
I was reading it every morning on the tube until I got the dog, and then he just sits on my lap now, and I can't get the book out. So, but I'm near the end, and to start with the end in mind is one of the major habits of successful people, right? And we didn't do that at Hoxo at the beginning. We didn't start with the end in mind. We just had an idea that we thought people would buy into. But now we're working like that. We're thinking about the 5-year plan and all the rest of it and where we want to be. And because it is much easier to go backwards from a vision than bundle along and get. It's like trying to get to Manchester without a map. You
But
struggle,
also,
wouldn't you?
the people who work for you want to know what they're doing, what the whole purpose of it is. So you've got to have a story.
100%. Well, Barnaby, Christmas time. What's the plan for the Parker residents over Christmas? Anything?
Parker
anything
residents
fun?
is going to get lots of mince pies, loads of brandy butter, crackers, Christmas trees up already.
Sounds great. Are you going to be doing any work, or is it a proper
Always
time?
working, Sean.
Always.
So
if anyone wants to reach out on Christmas Day, you'll be free for a chat.
I'm there.
Well, I'll hold you to that, Barnaby. I might give you a call.
Right.
I'm off back home, back to Manchester, taking the dog to meet the family for the first time.
Nice.
So I'm excited. I'm sure I'll document that.
Have your viewers heard the dog?
Oh, I don't know about the viewers. I've mentioned him on a few episodes.
the listeners.
I think most people on LinkedIn have seen the dog now. We did a pretty funny video today, or yesterday, was it, Jay? Where we... Henry basically won't walk unless I'm the guy moving him. So if you try and walk him on a lead, he'll just flop. So we did a little short video of him being dragged out of the office, and we just said, like, tag a recruiter that is going to be leaving the Christmas party like this. And I think in an hour we got over like 5,000 views and 45 comments.
Funny.
It's just about, we found that actually, especially on Fridays, but even every day, our industry is just full of like people that want to have fun. Like, they don't want to take everything too serious. They want to be like, but what that happens is they laugh, they joke, they see it, but they still then work out who you are.
Yep.
And then they start to follow you more intensely, and then work out actually what value you can add. So actually, do you know what? I'm a bit off topic, but it's something I want to mention. I think the beauty of being in a small brand in recruitment and a growing startup, which is what we were and what I am now and what you're going to build, is that tone of voice can be so fluid. And I think some of the bigger companies in recruitment are so scared of their people having an opinion online and being expressing their personalities, that they oppress and become so vanilla. And like, even these videos now, I have had a few comments of people messaging me going like, "Do you really want your clients to see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like, I don't give a shit, because do you know what? That's our personality. That's who we are. If you don't like it, don't work with us." Like, it's that. And I think there's that many people that will buy into you for that authenticity.
Well, we need to free those people, don't we? Everyone has a personal brand and a purpose 100%. And a why. We need to free them.
You can't oppress it. You got to let it out.
I agree.
Well, look, thanks, Bart. I'm delighted you've been on the show. Guys, that's it. That's the last episode of 2019. We have just reached the 5,000 listeners in the past 30 days. So I'm sat here just, I'm a bit overwhelmed, to be honest. I'm delighted. And I want to thank every single one of you for listening this year. We started the rag 12 months ago. We filmed our first episode on the 18th of December 2018. We released it on the 7th of Jan. We didn't really know what had happened. We knew I believed in telling stories to support owners, and clearly we're getting feedback around the world. We looked at the top 100 countries that are listening to the show, and literally you name a country, like Botswana, all over the world, people listening to this, which is incredible. So what I would say, as always, is if you do like this episode, if you've enjoyed what Barnaby's had to say, please share it on LinkedIn, put a comment on our posts, and let other people know. Let's get more people listening. If you're on the iTunes store, please do give us a comment, give us a rating, because it allows Apple to push us up the rankings. We are going for that #1 spot in the careers section. But look, have a great Christmas. Have an amazing new year. We'll be back again in early January with more episodes every Wednesday with another unique story from a high growth recruitment founder. Over to you. See you soon.